All right. Hi, everyone. We are live. We will just give people about a minute or two to join. So once enough people have joined, I will welcome the speakers onto the stage. But thank you so much for joining. Happy Wednesday, middle of the week. So we'll get started here in a second. Let's see, we can do a quick icebreaker. Okay, this is a controversial topic, whether or not you're a breakfast person. I personally am a huge breakfast person, but I don't eat my first meal of the day until later. So I don't know if it really counts as breakfast, more of like a brunch. Let me go ahead. Let me go ahead and bring one of our speakers on. Rob, I'm going to bring you on. All right, everyone, this is Rob. I'll let him introduce himself. Oh, Rob, you're on mute. There we go.
Got the hardware on mute, not the software. So hi, Rob Swizer. I'm a senior solutions architect here at DigitalOcean. I joined earlier this year after spending 5 years at MongoDB as a senior customer engineer and enterprise architect over there. And now over here, I specialize in databases. So we'll be talking about some very closely related ones today.
Great. And then now I'm going to bring up Zach Pierce, our second speaker today, or third speaker. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey, y'all. I'm Zach. I'm the product manager for managed databases here at DigitalOcean, and I'm going to give us kind of a run through of how to migrate while Rob gives us the details.
Great. Okay. And to introduce myself, my name is Nicole Gawash. I've been at DigitalOcean for almost 2 years. I'm the senior product marketing manager. I work with both Zach and Rob, specializing in databases. So we're really excited about this presentation today. If you have any questions at any point in time, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will have a dedicated Q&A session where you can ask Rob, Zach, or myself anything. But keep your questions coming as we go. We'll get to it eventually. All right. So the agenda today, we're going to do a quick overview of DigitalOcean for those who are new. We're going to go over managed databases, and then we'll get to the walkthrough of migrating your droplets to managed databases. Rob is going to give you guys a live demo, and then we're going to get into Q&A. All right. So here we go. Why DigitalOcean? This is a question that you might be asking yourself if you are looking at other hyperscalers within the market. But it really comes down to 3 things when choosing DigitalOcean, and that is simplicity, scalability, and approachability. So first, simplicity. We make cloud infrastructure easy so that you can focus on building your apps and these business critical applications, and so that you don't have to focus on managing servers. That's our goal for you as the customer. Customers typically see a 30% lower total cost of ownership, along with the simplicity of use, simplicity of operations, and they're able to set up their environments in half of the steps compared to other providers. So that right there are 2 value points that you can achieve with DigitalOcean right off the bat. And as you even build out your DigitalOcean environment. And then second is scalability. So whether you have seasonal spikes or you are looking to grow your business long term, it is very important that you are with a cloud provider that can grow with you. So whether you're just starting out running, let's say like a high traffic application, again, we're there to grow with you. We provide you the tools and infrastructure that you need to scale your business as it grows, and our statistics stand by this. You'll see we have around 2 million droplets, 221 petabytes of customer data, and 77 billion objects in storage. We have a very comprehensive portfolio of both products and solutions that were built for customers like you. We take feedback from our customers and we then implement it into our products so that our products and solutions can help your business grow. And then the last one is approachability. This is really important in a era of democratization of technology, but building on the cloud should be easy, whether you're a curious developer, a student developer, or a C-suite executive. It should be built for everyone. There should be little to no barriers of entry, and it should be easy, predictable, and well-documented. That's very important for self-service cloud usage. And here at DigitalOcean, we offer just that, right? So we have predictable billing so that you're not caught up in this bill confusion, like some say at AWS and GCP. We also offer around 8,000 tutorials and 3,000 pieces of documentation. And then we also offer 24/7 support with an average response time of less than 5 hours. So we aim for no surprises, just a reliable cloud platform built for developers and businesses. And then I want to talk a little bit about our footprint all across the globe. So that simple, scalable, and approachable cloud that we provide, customers are using that worldwide. We deliver reliable infrastructure and network connectivity, again, all around the globe. So we have 16 data centers across around 190 countries, and we support over 638,000 customers right now. So we have a proven track record of uptime and performant cloud services that help businesses scale, again, around the world with confidence. So that is something that's very important amongst an age of, reoccurring outages. I know that there have been some this week. And then now I want to touch briefly on managed databases. So at DigitalOcean, like I mentioned before, we offer a full stack cloud platform built to meet the needs of startups, developers, single developers, growing businesses, cloud native businesses, enterprises. So whether you're just getting started or building a business that is going to scale in the long term, or there's already been launches, it's already an established business, and pretty much anywhere in between that scale, between those 2 points, our suite of products and services can help build innovatively. So today we'll be talking about managed databases. We will be talking about all of our offerings just in general. We offer 6 right now. You'll see MongoDB, Kafka, MySQL, Postgres, caching for Valkey, and OpenSearch. So yeah, that's what we'll be talking about today. And that's what Zach will be drilling into later, is how to migrate your droplets to these managed database offerings. Okay, so again, I just want to briefly touch on the variety of managed databases and services that we offer. We currently offer 6 listed on the screen here. So we have some popular relational and NoSQL databases. These are your common MySQL, Postgres, and MongoDB. Very much in the same category, but serve different purposes in terms of use cases. And then the other category we have is more specialized data engines and platforms. So we have caching for Valkey. We have Kafka, which is a real-time streaming platform, which we have some webinars coming up on that. And then we also offer Managed OpenSearch, which is a real-time search and log analytics platform. So again, each of these databases is suited for particular use cases, as I mentioned. So just keep an eye out for engine-specific webinars in the future. Okay, and then I also wanted to touch on this slide. I wanted to show you guys because it shows how all of our 6 database engines that we currently offer stand up against competitors in terms of performance while maintaining a level of simplicity that, again, a C-suite or a beginning developer or anyone in between can use our cloud console. So as you can see here, we beat out AWS, GCP, and Azure in terms of out-of-the-box performance by 30%. So simply put, we outperform the nearest hyperscalers by 30%, right? And the cost efficiency or the throughput per dollar, as you can see in the chart to the right, is even more impressive. So DigitalOcean outperforms the nearest hyperscaler by 42%. And this can be attributed to a lot of things, right? So one of them being how quickly we advance our database engines. We have over 10 feature enhancements and new products, coming in general a quarter. And so we have some more coming within Q4 to end out the year. So that's very exciting. All right, and then I wanted to touch on SLAs. So we deliver hyperscaler level SLAs and uptime at up to 30% lower cost. So you'll notice that this is applicable to a wide range of products, including managed databases, Droplets, Kubernetes, load balancers, spaces, volumes, a comprehensive cloud with hyperscaler level SLAs. That's what we are. And that's what we can offer to our customers. So you are able with these SLAs to build a well-rounded application with our wide range of products and gain peace of mind knowing that it is built to stay running. Okay, thank you guys so much. If you have any questions, again, just leave them in the comments, but I'm going to hand it over to Zach to walk you through migrating your droplets to your managed databases. Zach, you're on mute.
I love when that happens. Being on mute is the bane of our existence. So awesome. Thank you, Nicole, for the introduction and for kind of running through all of that. So as we get started, in the chat, I'd really like if you guys could post what engines you're thinking about migrating from. We're going to cover MySQL, Postgres, and Mongo today. But definitely curious to hear where else your data is stored and if there's ways that we can help you out. As I get started, though, I want to do some level setting, and I want to make sure that we give you some tips that are just applicable generally, kind of no matter which database you're on. Nicole, are you able to? There we go. Thank you. Awesome. So the next slides, we're going to run through just kind of tips that we've encountered as we've helped customers migrate. And these are not necessarily technical tips. These are more best practices of how to get started. So the first things first, run a proof of concept. I really don't recommend trying to migrate your production workload on day one. So definitely figure out how it works. There are some complexities and things that we can't handle for you. So you need to have some processes around cutover and all of that. So first and foremost, definitely run a proof of concept to kind of figure out how this migration should work for you. Our next biggest tip is start in high availability. We don't want your data to ever be at risk or your application to have unplanned downtime. So by starting from day one with your full clusters created, having a primary standby nodes and read-only nodes if you utilize them is a big, it's critical. And I highly recommend kind of starting from day one with high availability. I promise it will help, it'll help you sleep at night knowing that your application is highly available. So I think this one is fairly obvious, but it's also pretty intuitive. If you're trying to migrate from PG-18, don't set up a PG-17 or maybe a PG-13 cluster when you set up your managed database at first. So we do support migrations between different versions or from between possibly a higher minor version to a lower minor version. So that would be like 17.01 to and 17.05. But try to keep your versions, try to make sure your managed database, which is typically newer, on a more up-to-date version. Next up, there's no better time than when you're moving to clean your house, right? So this one is just, we all accumulate kind of extra superfluous data, temporary tables for doing one-time analysis and debugging and troubleshooting. So just make sure, take this time, take this opportunity while you're performing a migration to, kind of tighten things up, clean them up. You're always welcome to move those test databases to managed databases too. So this is a really common gotcha. And even though your managed database will run within your own VPC, especially if you're coming from another provider. I know we are highlighting Droplets today. Making sure your databases are publicly accessible on both sides. Our tooling does require external connections to be available for both the source as well as the target database. So just open up those firewalls temporarily, and you'll be on your way soon. So our next biggest tip actually came from a little bit of, I won't call it an incident, but we had a customer that was really frustrated by the speed of their database migration. And it turns out their application was still writing multiple gigabytes per second. So, just making sure you're not trying to migrate your database while you have extremely high traffic. A lot of times we think, oh, well, we should do this we should do this in the middle of the night, but that might be when you're doing some nightly jobs that might really increase IO. So, look at your overall database workload and make sure that you're kind of scheduling this, or maybe pause those maintenance jobs for a little while so that you're not really fighting and causing a more painful migration experience than you might need. I touched on this one kind of at the beginning, but knowing how to cut over your application is something that takes practice. I can't tell you exactly how to do it for every application that y'all deploy, but having those steps. Do you need to do you need to merge code, or do you need to just edit some configurations? Like, really figure that out. And goes to the POC. The POC is a great time to figure that out, but really have a plan so that when your production workload is ready to move, you can do it with little to no downtime. And then finally, I gave you advice that I never really want to give you, which is turn off your firewalls earlier on. Once your database, though, is fully replicated and you're using your managed database, re-add your trusted sources. That's what we call our whitelisting firewall rules in managed databases. Make sure you enable those and re-add them so that your database is secure. So as we go through each of the database engines, I'm going to give you some kind of really high-level things for how to get started, and then I'm going to tell you what to look out for after your migration's complete and as you think about your cutover. After that, we're then going to turn it over to Rob for each engine, where he's going to show you actually configuring your database or doing the whole process through the CLI. And so you'll have a really good example. One thing I do want to call out is definitely check out our product docs. I'm giving you a high level. I'm not going to necessarily cover every step. Rob will cover every step, but he's going to be doing it pretty quickly because we've already got the code written. So definitely make sure you're checking out our product docs for step-by-step instructions on everything you need to do, as well as common troubleshooting tips you need. So as we're looking at MySQL, the big things that we need to highlight as you get started is you need to have replication privileges for the user that you're doing the migration through. We will collect a username and password as part of the connection string to your source database. And then also make sure that your database is accessible. We recommend setting a wildcard bind address. The other thing to note is, unfortunately, we can't do this with absolutely no downtime at all. So you will have to restart the source server, typically twice, but for all of those changes to go into effect. Once your database is complete, the migration process has finished, or the live data import process is finished, we definitely recommend setting your source database to read-only equals true, mostly just to make sure you don't have a case where some writes are going over here and some writes are going over here. You're going to want to then change your application's connection string so it's pointing at your newly imported database and managed databases, and then click Stop Migration, and that will turn replication off. So while it's importing, as I mentioned earlier, Rob is going to kind of give us a walkthrough and explain everything, how it works in a bit more detail.
All right, hello everyone. Wow, and the mute situation again. I'm sorry about that. All right, so everyone, I'm logged into my MySQL droplet through a shell. And what we're going to work through first is on the list of what we got to do is preparation, right? So the most important preparation for MySQL that we're going to check into, besides from everything Zach covered, so from a networking standpoint, all of your DigitalOcean interface, any kind of firewall situations, trusted sources, be sure to follow the docs there. But once you're kind of ready with all of those things, then I'm going to go in and I'm going to check about 4 critical variables for MySQL. And I'm going to be pasting commands here to make things go a little bit quicker. But in short, the select at syntax for MySQL is how we check on variables in particular. So I'm going to query these 4. These are the bind address variables and then the GTID variables. Bind address is to ensure that your MySQL instance is going to be accessible from anywhere. And then the GTID ones are because for MySQL 8 and newer, instead of using the binary log file position for replication, GTID is the new and better way to do it. And our migration tooling requires that we're using GTID. Now, if you have everything set correctly already, great. And actually, I have that here. But I'm going to show you in case you don't, you'll see these at values that might be like that 127.0.0.1 for like local hosts and stuff would be what we'd see like bind address. GTID mode, if you see that disabled or anything other than what these are right now, we'd want to go and address those. But let's say that we have an issue with the config and we want to address that. I've created a command. Again, you can do this several different ways. But here I'm just using a here doc to enforce exactly what I want. I'm putting this, I'm on an Ubuntu system. So if you're using something different, like a Red Hat based system or anything like that, the exact file path here may change. But in general, for MySQL, this little like Z in front of the migration, MySQL d.cnf there, it loads alphabetically. And so the last config file loaded is going to be the one that overrides anything previous. And so if I'm doing something important where I've got like a temporary migration or something I'm doing, or anything like that, I'll usually put like a Z in front to try to help make sure that there's, that's the last one pulled and it overrides anything else that might have going on config wise. If you're already using this kind of setup, you can go like ZZ or do other things like that. But in any case, so for basic one, that's what I've got. I'm making sure these are all set correctly. And then I'm going to commit that. And then we'll just verify that we can see that file, right? And as you can see, that shows up as we expect. And that, again, was already shown in MySQL. But now, again, if we had to set this normally, we're going to want to then have to restart MySQL. So I'm going to go ahead and do that quickly over here. And again, I'm on the source droplet at the moment, but part of that's because out of box, MySQL will come configured just for localhost. I'm trying to make sure we see how to take care of that issue. And then we can shift over to if you have like a client machine or anything like that you'd prefer to work from, where you can do that instead. And so I've got a console tab we'll switch to. But first, let's restart MySQL. And so we'll see that finish for that issue. And so now I'm going to flip over to our client shell. And just as a heads up, as far as remote connections go, I've already configured for my client setup over here. I have a .my.cnf file. So that initial dot, if it's in your user directory on a Linux installation, is what it's like obviously hidden file is the intent, but MySQL automatically recognizes that and looks for that under your user. And if it finds it, it'll pull any configurations you've got there. And I'm not showing mine because unfortunately it's got like passwords and usernames and stuff. But that's why you won't see any additional authentication information on my MySQL calls, even though I'm connecting remotely here because it's already embedded. So again, I'm going to run the same query I ran before now that we've restarted MySQL. Yeah, let's take a slightly longer second, I guess, getting over the network. But we see that this is configured the way we want it to be. So now we're compatible with what we need to start fully preparing for the migration. And the next part we're going to go into here is actually creating the users that we need. Now, again, to expedite things and just ensure that from a security standpoint we're covered, I've set up for all the demos I'm going to do today these little auth files, just shell files. They have variable assignments. If you're actually maintaining secrets or managing secrets in your environment, there are much better ways to do this in a plain text file. I'm just doing this because we have kind of control over the droplet over here, and it's a little bit easy to show the step of that hey, maybe you have a script that goes and fetches stuff, or maybe you've got a secrets manager or an M setup, anything like that. But in my case, I've got this going on here. And so you'll see some variables coming through, and I'll try to highlight when they come in. just keep in mind that when you see those, they're coming from a file like that or something to that effect. And they're like kind of pulled into my environment. So, you can think about it that way. So now that we have our variables set correctly for MySQL, we've got to create our migration user. And so I'm just going to call this one Migrate. And again, I'll show you the command here for what I'm going to do. Now, just to make my life easier, I'm doing all these things, directly from bash. So you're seeing this MySQL-E. That means execute. And then I'm like kind of feeding a string. And there's some escaping going on. It's a little messy. You can load directly into the MySQL shell and do this interactively. In a lot of cases, that might be a little bit simpler. But again, just for expediency here, I'm kind of using this nomenclature. So the key thing that we're looking for is Migrate user. It needs to be, the host name needs to be percentage, which is the wildcard that says they can connect from anywhere. And that's what is going to make sure that your new DigitalOcean managed database, when we go and set up the migration, will have no problem logging in as this user. And this identified by, again, I've set up a password. You guys won't be able to see it, but if you're using this directly, make sure to put that there. So that'll create the user. And now I also need to grant the user permissions. And unfortunately, at the moment, we have to get pretty extensive permissions to this user for MySQL. So I'm going to grant all on here on all databases so that when we go to migrate, that all the access we need there is there. One of the nice things about setting up a custom migration user instead of using an existing one is that if for any reason we're going to have this source database around after the migration completes, we can just drop this user and take away any issue with access or anything like that, because it's not a required application user, it's not a root user or anything like that the system would otherwise require. So I'll have those grants, and then after we have the grants, we're going to flush privileges, which is going to help us make sure that the grants are actually applied and picked up. And so once I do something like that, the other thing I want to make sure is before I make this user and I go, okay, we're good to go. Let's go and just log in and do something simple, show tables, make sure the user is able to get in and is able to see the specific database we want to migrate as well, right? So that -D with the employees there, the employee database in our sample data set is where we're going to be looking to move over to DigitalOcean's managed database service. And so running this, again, we see it works fine. MySQL complains about using a password directly here. And again, to get around that, I mentioned that .my.cnf file. That would be the easy way. There's quite a few other clients you can use as well that have other solutions embedded there. But again, the key is we got what we wanted to see there, and that happened. That worked well. And so the next thing I'm going to do before we get any further is to grab the UID of the MySQL server that we're working with here from a source standpoint. This is kind of how MySQL identifies itself as far as the GTID system goes. And this is just a step that I'm going to capture this now. We're going to use it later. But I wanted to make sure I showed it so that when we look at some of the later stuff going on, that's not super foreign, right? So the other thing I've done kind of in our environment is set up doctl already. And so I'll show in general what this is going to look like. So using our doctl command, and this is something you can find in our documentation for our tooling. We have many other ways to interact with our API and other systems. doctl is just really easy from a CLI standpoint. And it's very easy to set up and run on Linux and Ubuntu in particular, supporting snap packages. You can literally grab the snap package for this. So I'm going to just show what databases that are attached to my project for MySQL. And if I'm going to do this and grab the ID, which we'll need in just a second for the migration, this is pretty simple to copy out of here. And then we can also verify from the naming, it's the correct one that we're looking to migrate to and all of that. And then what I've also done to make life a little bit easier here to prepare for using the API, we do have a very nice GUI for what it's worth. And for the most part, I recommend initiating migrations from there. And I'm sure Zach, can show more of it or answer questions about it. But that's the easiest way to go forward. And we'll give you kind of a nice form to fill out for what your credentials are and where you're pulling from and all that. I'm going to use the API today, just keep everything in the command line, and also to kind of give everyone here that extra bit of like, hey, here's how you do this. If you wanted to automate it, here's kind of the building bricks you might need for it, and give you a little bit extra out of the session. And then just by the nature of CLI, I'll be able to do a little bit more monitoring that I could do trivially through the through the GUI. So I've set up some automation on my end for doctl to go and grab just the ID of the database that we're going to need. So there's a little bit of an awk there, basically pulling that first column that you see in the previous output. And I'm going to store that in a variable. And then I'm going to use that a little bit later when we have to specify, well, actually like imminently later, right? When we need to specify where, what exact database cluster we're connecting to and using. So to begin the migration, it's going to be a large curl command, and I'll walk through it as quickly as I can here. If I get it copied correctly, apologies for that. There we are. So we're going to do a put to a remote target. Now, there is a requirement for a DigitalOcean authentication token. It's one of the other benefits if you're going to use the API of setting up DOCTL. Setting up DOCTL, going through that process, and our documentation on that will naturally have you set up a DigitalOcean token, and that will work for this just as well as it will for the CLI. So from there, the things you got to provide are your source databases, host name, IP address, whatever is going to get us to the right place. The database from there that you want to migrate, so employees for us, the port, and by default for MySQL, that's usually going to be 3306. If you've modified it, you'll want to put your modified port in there. Username, here, remember earlier I set up that do migrate user, and so I'll specify that. Password, you're going to pass that in as well. And then by default, our migrations are SSL encrypted. If for some reason you're having trouble and you are okay with it being plain text, and it, again, is not recommended, but if you need that workaround for some reason, you can set this disable SSL to true to initiate that. And then the request point is going to go to our database API. And then this is where I mentioned earlier, I grabbed that UUID as far as like from the DOCTL side of things. And I'm going to plop that in here. And then I'm going to hit the online migration endpoint. And I'm going to feed the output of this to JQ just to make the output a little bit nicer for us. And so we'll see if that's going to fire off and get started. And we failed a precondition. Great. So on the plus side, we do check for everything that we need to there. And so if you do have any issues, it's going to tell you right away so that we can work on addressing what happened there. And our endpoint is not available. All right, well, we'll come back to that in a minute. Live demos, everyone. Zach, I'm going to throw it back over to you if I want to cover Postgres a little bit, and we'll come back to the CLI in a minute with a more working solution.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, the joys of live demos, right? So as we just kind of wrapped up MySQL, some kind of critical things. I call these kind of gotchas that we do want to highlight as you're going through this process. First off, MariaDB is not MySQL. We get this question into support quite frequently. While we love MariaDB, Rob comes from MariaDB. We definitely, we only support MySQL at this time, and they're no longer drop-in compatible. So if you need to move from MariaDB, connect with us. We have a migrations program where we can help you guys with some of those strategies if that's necessary. But out of the box functionality, you will need, you won't be able to just plug in your credentials the same. Also want to highlight that the 2 restarts are required as you're going into this. And then we also want to mention that in cases where your migration isn't able to set up its active replication, we are able to still do basically kind of a less live version of a data migration. So we do still have the tooling where you can import your data. It's just not going to keep your database cluster in sync to let you do the cutover. So you have to be a lot more careful with timing. And finally, as I kind of said at the beginning, using the read-only for when you're doing the cutover is just a really good way to make sure your application doesn't accidentally continue updating your database. So now we're going to jump into Postgres. I think that Postgres, as we all know, is kind of the most popular database engine. It's what we're seeing the most of. So hopefully this is most exciting for y'all. So again, as you're getting started, some things to keep in mind that I really want to highlight. You will have to restart your source server. You do need to use the Postgres user for your migration. And we recommend removing other super users. The reason for this is we're not able to import super users, and there can be permissions issues after the fact. So use the Postgres user to do that. And then again, please remove trusted sources because we get this question a lot if you can't tell. After the migration's working or has finished and wrapped up, this process is very similar to MySQL. You're going to just click the Stop Migration button in the Cloud Console UI or through the API if you want to use it that way. And then you'll need to update your application connection string. And then I can't iterate it enough. Make sure you add back your trusted sources. So I will turn it back over to Rob now for the demo on PG. Hopefully we can run through this without the live demo challenges. So thanks, Rob.
Yeah, no problem. I assure everyone it worked yesterday. So on the Postgres side of things, I'm shelled into our Postgres node. I'm going to kind of skip through and go a little bit quicker on this one. There are quite a few variables you need to make that are set correctly, and we need users set up with the correct permissions. The critical thing here, though, is this wall level is one that will almost never be set to where you need it to be to start out with. It's going to usually be replica by default, and logical is what we need to set it to. And unfortunately, that's going to require a restart. So make sure that that's set correctly before you proceed any further. And again, our documentation has everything else we need there. But now I'm going to flip over, now that I've already preset things up here to go a little bit quicker. I'm going to flip back over to our console side, and we're going to verify that our listed addresses are correct. And again, this goes back to the same thing as with MySQL we talked about for bind address. This is Postgres's version of that. There's a few other aspects that as well in the HBA comp you want to take care of that our documentation covers as well. The other thing that we want to take care of is I'm going to show the example here, but I've already taken care of it on our side. Any users other than the Postgres user that have super user permissions or anything like that, we want to make sure to remove those. And so this is the command through which you can do that. And then the Postgres user very commonly will come pre-equipped with this role or this kind of like role option of sorts called bypass RLS. And so we want to also remove that from the Postgres user because migrating into the managed environment, we're not able to support a user with that setup. But your Postgres user is still going to maintain super user. So you don't have to take that out for them. That just needs to be the only user that's there, if that makes sense. And so we can validate what we just did through that. And we can see that there's only one super user here. And there's a couple other users, but none of them have any problematic settings or configurations or anything like that. So now we're ready to proceed to actually starting the migration. And again, we're going to use the API for this. And we use a very similar technique with DOCTL to go and grab that UID. And I'm going to make sure I've got our auth loaded for Postgres. Again, that's where all these variables come from. And so now we're going to do the same query to our API, just with the Postgres flavor. The default port for Postgres, by the way, is 5432. And so we'll run this and hopefully get a better result this time. Excellent. So this time we see that it says running. It tells us when it's created at, and it gives us an ID. That ID can be used later if you'd like to save it. So if you are using any kind of automation in this, I do recommend taking that, automation, parsing that JSON output and storing that if feasible. And then I'm going to run a while command over here just to keep an eye on this. Now you can also hop into your panel for DigitalOcean for your Postgres database, and you take a look there, and it'll show you if the migration is running or not. And there's also a lot of insights and graphs you can look there as well to see like when things catch up and all of that. But here I'm going to use a Postgres command to look at the wall LSN differences. I'm giving it a second to run a little bit further before we do that. And then there's also a query we can do for API, which is the second one down here, where we can use a GET request to that same API endpoint. And then I'm going to use JQ to make the output of that nicer. But it'll basically keep showing us that status. And so we'll see that we've got a migration running and we have wall streaming happening. And we basically want to make sure that that replay lag is going to stay at 0. We see the status here is running still, and what I want to eventually see is the status turn into syncing. And once that status is at syncing instead of running, and then we have a replay lag bytes of 0 through this command, then we should be good to go. And then we'll be able to complete the migration if we're all good there. Now, if you were actually doing this in production, you can, again, do a production live migration. Then if you have queries actively go into your source Postgres node and you're planning a cutover, you want to make sure everything is good here. So we see we're in that state streaming now instead of running, which is what we want to see. Or syncing, there we are, the syncing state instead of running. And we're going to get an update on replay lag bytes, but I think it's going to be 0 based on the previous one. And so it is. So at this point, now that everything is good, once you're ready to do your cutover, you can. And so we recommend keeping your migration running until you're done with your cutover, because if anything is written to the source application or source database, you want to make sure that comes over here. So you got a single source of truth. You perform your cutover. Ideally during your cutover, if you have maintenance mode available or anything where you can do to make sure that from the point that you cut over, everything consistently is over on your new DigitalOcean database, that's preferred. And so now I'm going to Control-C to stop my little while loop there, and I'm going to then stop our migration as well, which is just going to be a delete command to that same API endpoint. Now I do need the actual migration ID, so I ran a command to go and grab that, which we can grab. Again, you see it pretty easily from the watch there. And so nothing negative comes back. That means everything's good to go there. And I'll run one more status to just show what it looks like so you can verify from the CLI that this is the way it should be. And so you'll see here it says status canceled. And so canceled is what we did. It didn't actually cancel the migration. What it did was it unhooked replication from the source is what it means there. And so that's how you use our tool through CLI to migrate Postgres. And I think we're going back to Zach. We want to talk about Mongo quickly.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. So maybe we actually planned the initial demo challenges to actually show you the failure message. So I do want to highlight this. It is really common that we get feedback from customers that they run into errors, and our support team is there to help. And our tooling does a lot of pre-checks. So just because you get an error doesn't mean you can't migrate in. It just means you might need to change one of the configurations first. You might have a role with or you might have a user with a problematic permission set. All those things are things that we're checking for to make sure that when we get your database in, it's able to run well in our environment. So if you hit an error, basically, feel free to don't just give up. So some of the gotchas we see. I do want to highlight that you do have to have super user in some capacity on your cluster. So we have seen other managed services, you might not be able to get this. So this is a pretty much a requirement to do a logical migration. By bypassing RLS, that is a very common attribute that we get support tickets for all the time. We have it in our docs, but just make sure you alter your user so that's not a problem. And then, of course, I sound like a broken record, but make sure you turn your trusted sources back on. So here at DO, we generally make most things pretty easy. So I think we showed you the migration process on kind of hard mode. But you can do this also through the Cloud Console for MySQL and Postgres. So one thing I do want to highlight, we can't do your configuration for you. So on your source database, we had some code, but you need to set those parameters by yourself or kind of outside of the managed database experience. But when you're ready to migrate, what you can do is you can go into your cluster details page. And I've already set up this Postgres cluster. It's the same for MySQL as well. And you can either click on Actions and then set up migration, or just, if you get this box, just click the purple box to set up a migration. Once you have selected that box, or once you've clicked the button to set up a migration, then go ahead and select your preferred connection type. We're able to support via hostname, connection strings, private IP address, and then fill out the rest of the form. So we'll need your database. If you do have databases you want to exclude, you're able to list those out here. And then you'll need the username and password. We recommend keeping SSL encryption on. However, if you need to turn that off, you can uncheck that box. what's going to happen in the back end now is we're doing all of those pre-checks that were problematic in the first demo. And we're making sure your source cluster is accessible and the right permissions are assigned. There's nothing that's going to cause your database instability once it's moved over to managed databases. Once it finishes those pre-checks, oops, I accidentally took a picture of my login manager asking me if I wanted to save my PG password. But once you complete your Postgres, once the pre-checks are complete on both Postgres and MySQL, you'll basically just get a message saying, hey, you're good to go. Go ahead and start the migration. In the UI, you never need to log into the API or the CLI to manage this. You will get a box that just says your managed database is in kind of a migration status, and you can stop it at any point. There are some benefits to using the CLI, and we're making some improvements to the UI here. But on the API, this is where you're going to be able to check some of those, some of the replication transaction tracking and all of that stuff. So definitely some benefits using the API, but again, you can do it through the Cloud Console itself. And that's really how you can do your live migration with PG and MySQL. Now, as I jump into Mongo, Mongo is the place where we have quite a different process. Unfortunately, we don't have this available in our UI at this time. So to get started, you'll need to basically stop your application from writing to your source database. So you're going to have some downtime when you need to make this migration happen. We recommend using Mongo dump and then Mongo restore to basically dump your data and then push your data into your new database. You will run a lot of these commands on your local machine, or if you create another droplet, so you don't have to download anything locally, you can do that as well. So with that, Rob has a quick demo of running those tools.
Everyone, while I was off camera, went ahead and reran the MySQL migration, and it's going fine now. And on the back end, we got an explanation from our engineering team of what happened, and it's all good. So as Zach was saying, if you ever run into something like that, just go ahead and contact DigitalOcean. Our support teams are excellent, and it's one of the reasons to host with us. So for Mongo, as Zach said, we don't have anything where we can use the like a GUI or anything like that, but we do have the typical Mongo tools. So I'm going to work through just what's on the client side, but to call out really quickly, you're going to have to create a migration user, and they're going to have the backup role. And we recommend making that the admin DB, and that's like from a credential standpoint as far as Mongo goes. And you also have to make sure your bind IPs, just like you would on Postgres and MySQL, are going to be 0.0.0 or similar, so that you have universal access, and you're not limited to just logging in from local to Mongo, which is again usually how Mongo sets things up by default. You'll have to restart Mongo to apply those changes, so make sure that you've got that planned out in your migration process. So on my end, again, I've got some authentication set up over here. I'm going to verify the authentication is going to work for us from our remote shell here. So I'm going to try connecting to the backup user I've set up. And 27017 is that default port. And as we're saying, we're having a little bit of an issue there. Backup user add source IP is not rendering. That's why. They resource our. Oh, because I'm on Mongo, of course. I'm on the wrong tab. I apologize, everyone. Let us do this from the correct tab, and there we are. So as we can see, we can connect without issue with that backup user. So I'm just going to exit out of that so that I can now go ahead and start our dump process here. And I'm going to make sure that we have our backup archive that we earlier is deleted. So we can make a fresh one here. And so again, from URI standpoint, you're going to give how to connect, which is what we do first. Authentication database, I'm going to make sure it has admin in there, but you can also do as part of your URI connection string. And manually feed the password. Again, there's a way to do that through the connection string. It's a little bit easier. This -o is going to specify where output goes, and it's going to go into like a folder setup. So I'm going to do that. And we'll see that this is very, very quick. It's already good to go. It's going to output quite a few BSON files. Those are the ones we care about from an importation standpoint. And so now from a Mongo standpoint, to just pull this into the DigitalOcean side of things, again, I've already got things set up for DigitalOcean. Credentials are pulled in here, but I'm just going to run a for loop through that folder. So I'm going to find all the BSON files in there is what's going on there. And then for each of those, I'm going to use Mongo restore to then target our DigitalOcean Mongo database. And we're going to pull each of those into there. And it's going to complain about us using a password on the command line. It doesn't realize we're doing a few steps to obfuscate that. So this will take a minute to run as it's going to, again, find and grab each of those BSON files for us, and it's going to pull them up to the cloud. And we're pretty much good to go. So I'm going to turn this back over for us to wrap things up.
Awesome. So the number of times we've seen the question asked, wait, how do I actually use Mongo Restore through managed databases? And I do really want to highlight, run these on your client, spin up a new droplet. It is the best way to migrate your MongoDB workload. We do have some other ways you can export your data from Mongo and re-import it. Mongo dump and restore, though, is kind of our tried and true method, and it's what we recommend the most. You will have downtime, but through this method, you saw it's pretty fast. We've done this with other much larger databases than what we had in our sample database. And because of our pretty strong IOPS performance, we do see these backups and restores actually process quite quickly. So yeah, those are some of the tips and gotchas on the MongoDB front. And I know we are a little bit over time. We're open to taking questions. If you're on the live stream, happy to address those through the chat. Also, if you need to, if you want to send your questions through the live streaming platform, I believe you can do that too.
Yeah. So go ahead and leave your question as a comment, and then I can put it up on the screen. I believe we're live streaming on LinkedIn, X, Twitch, and YouTube. So, but for the time being, Zach, if you could go to the next slide.
Yeah. So, hey, we threw a lot of information at you today, how to migrate. Feel free to rewatch this webinar, but definitely I recommend checking out our help docs if you're wanting to take this on for yourself. We do, as I mentioned, though, have a migration program where you can get the assistance of Rob or some of our other awesome folks here at DO to really make your migration easy and to help you get break away from some of those clouds that charge 30% more, have less price performance. So scan this QR code if you want to learn more about the migrations program, fill out the form, and we'll get you connected with the right people on our side to help you move those workloads. And I do want to call out, of course, I'm going to talk the most about databases because that's the product that I manage, but we do have kind of a full cloud migration service available if you're interested in moving over. And then just kind of as quickly closing out, I think people love credits. Feel free to scan this QR code to get the credits you want. And then if you want help either from our migrations program or you want to contact sales, go ahead and follow the links there or QR code there for doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. And then I just want to clarify that there is more information on eligibility for our migrations program for our fully supported migrations for free over on the do.co/migrate page, which was the QR code right here. So if you have any questions about who is an eligible customer, we have more information on that website. All right, so thank you guys. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to assume that this presentation was so thorough that you became an expert, that you don't have any questions. But if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us over our contact sales form. If you just, I'll actually type it in right now, but you can just Google DigitalOcean contact sales and it will come up. But just for the sake of it right now, I will go ahead and put it in the chat so you can grab it. So if you have any questions that you think of later, feel free to grab this link and just contact us through there. We will get you routed to Rob first, and then he can bring in Zach, myself if needed. All right. Thank you, everyone, so much. I appreciate it. Oh, thank you. Very kind. Appreciate that. We love, coming on here and teaching you guys. With cloud services and products, there needs to be guidance and documentation and demos and things like that. We want to enable you. So we're really great to hear that. Or it's really great to hear that. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Zach, Rob, if there's no closing words, I think we can go ahead and end this. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye, everyone.